Hey guys, Matt back here again with some more studying in Acts. If you've seen the other two videos, you know we're on verse 25 now. We're studying chapter 16, verses 25 through 34 today. If you haven't seen the other two videos, we did verses 16 through 24. I'd recommend that you guys go watch those, and I'll put a link in the description below because these are in order. It'll make more sense if you watch them that way. Let's start out in verse 25. I've got my notes over here, so make sure I don't miss anything for you guys. So if you see me glancing over there, that's what I'm doing. But verse 25, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. All right, so we notice the big word here is to, and that just stands out to me because it doesn't say about God, it says to God. They're praying to God, and they're lifting God up, even in the situation that they're in. They've just been beaten with rods in their back with no clothes. They've been thrown in prison in the dark. They've got shackles on, stocks on their ankles. They can't escape, and they're praying and singing hymns to God. Even in their bad situation, they're not letting this deter them from praising God. All right, let's look at verse 26. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundation of the prisons were shaken, and immediately all the doors were open, and everyone's bonds were unfastened. Okay, so the great earthquake, we're not given any detail really if it was just at the jail where the earthquake happened or if it was the whole city. But we do know it was a great earthquake, is what it said, and the foundation of the prison was shaken, and immediately all the doors were open, and everyone's bonds were unfastened. Our verse 27, when the jailer woke up and saw that the prison doors were open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself, supposing that the prisoners had escaped. Okay, so the jailer woke up. I'm assuming he probably woke up from the earthquake because it says it was a great earthquake. That probably what woke him up. But I want you guys to picture in your mind, this prison isn't like our modern day prisons now. It doesn't have electricity. You don't have a light in every cell where you can just look up and see that the prisoner is still there. This is a dark dungeon type prison. It says in verse 24 that they were in the inner prison, so I'm sure it's even darker there. I've seen pictures and photos where there may have been one little porthole from the top, but this was midnight. You have to realize that this was midnight, and it was probably extremely dark inside Paul and Silas's cell and maybe every other one. The only light that they probably had was a candle or maybe a torch that was hanging on the wall. So the jailer couldn't see into the prisons, and he thought that they had all escaped. So he drew his sword. He was about to kill himself. And this was actually more common than you might think because he was either going to face the same wrath that the prisoners were going to face, whatever their sentencing was, or he may have just been killed because of his dereliction of duty, not being able to hold the prisoners in the cells like he was supposed to because he was ordered to keep them safe in the prisons. So he not only didn't want to face whatever um, punishment he would have gotten from his superiors, but he also, the humiliation that he and his family would have had of him failing as a soldier and as a jailer. So he was about to kill himself, and then verse 28 we see where Paul cries out with a loud voice, "Do not harm yourself, for we are all still here." And I'm sure the jailer was relieved that that happened because in verse 29 he said, "And the jailer called for lights and rushed in." So, he may have grabbed the torch off the wall or he, grabbed a candle or something, rushed in, and trembling with fear, he fell down before Paul and Silas. All right, verse 30, then he brought them out and said, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" I want you guys to remember previous to this in verse 25, Paul and Silas were singing hymns to God. And the jailer was there for this. He saw them after they had been beaten and bloodied on their backs and then thrown into stocks in this dungeon. They're still praising God. Um, and he wants to be part of that. He runs in and sees them still there, and he wants to be saved. And this word saved is talking about salvation, and it means it's used principally of God rescuing believers from the penalty and power of sin. It's delivered out of danger and into safety is basically what this salvation is. And he's talking about wanting to be a follower of Christ or giving God his life. All right, verse 31, and they said, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." All right, so basically Paul wraps it up in a nutshell for him here. He says, "Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and you will be saved." And we could do a whole nother study on the word believe and what you have to do in order to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ or to be saved for your salvation. But what I really want to talk about here is you and your household, where Paul says you and your household will be saved. Paul's not saying that if he believes, everybody in his household is automatically saved. Like if I believe that my wife and my children are automatically saved. That's not what Paul's saying here. He's saying that if you believe and your household believe, you all can be saved. All you got to do is believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. All right, verse 32, and they spoke the word of the Lord to him and all who were in his house. All right, so basically the jailer took Paul and Silas back to his home, and Paul and Silas did what they know how to do best, and that was preach the gospel. They didn't waste any time. They went straight to the house of the jailer and talked to he and his family about what the gospel is and what Jesus Christ did for them and salvation. And then if we look in verse 33, and the jailer, he took them the same hour of the night and washed their wounds, and he was baptized at once, he and his family. All right, I want you guys to notice something that I thought was kind of interesting here. It says that after Paul and Silas preached the gospel to the jailer and his family, the jailer took them that same hour that night and washed the wounds of Paul and Silas. So they didn't. Paul and Silas weren't like, hey, yeah, we'll talk to you about Jesus in a minute. Let us get cleaned up. Let us fix our backs, get bandaged up, and then we'll talk to you about Jesus Christ. They knew, Paul and Silas knew that it was of the utmost importance to talk about the gospel and preach the gospel to the jailer and his family. They weren't worried about their wounds at the time. They cleaned those up afterwards. Salvation is the most important thing here, and they preached the gospel. And if we look at the end of verse 33 here, it says, and he was baptized at once, he and all of his family. I also want you guys to notice the order in which this happens. I'm probably going to get some comments on that. That's okay, because what we have here is the steps of Christianity. You're going to hear the word. Paul and Silas preached to them. Then they believed in God, the jailer and his family, and then they were baptized in that order. You guys leave a comment below. That's what my Bible says, and that's what I believe the steps of Christianity are. Hear the word, believe in God, and then be baptized. And then if we look at verse 34, we're going to see where it says, then he brought them up into his house and set food before them, and he rejoiced along with his entire household that he had believed in God. All right, so this jailer brings them up and breaks bread with them. I think this is a beautiful thing that the jailer actually brought them up into his home. They were all Christ followers. They were all believers in God, and they broke bread together and enjoyed the time that they had together and the happiness together. Next week, we're going to look at verses 35 through 40, and we're going to close up this little section of Acts and see exactly what happens after Paul and Silas have preached the gospel to this jailer's family. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. I love you guys. Hope you have a great week. Lift those weights and grow that faith.